Have you ever had a moment where you see a band name and you kind of anticipate that they're going to be one genre and they end up being something totally different? That's what the topic of this video is about, where I wanted to discuss 4 bands that, in my own experience, when I saw their names, I anticipated something totally different and they ended up being something else. So, kind of phrasing this as the Mount Rushmore of band names that sound nothing like their music. But without further ado, I want to get into the first one, which would be Greta Van Fleet. So whenever I first saw the name Greta Van Fleet, I hadn't heard the music first, as is most of these artists. And to me, that's almost like, it sounds like a folk artist name, or, on the surface it actually looks like it would be a female artist. However, Greta Van Fleet, as we know, is 4 brothers, I believe, 4 men from Michigan that create somewhat like hard rock. Not quite metal, but what one would call a clone of Led Zeppelin in their early years. I hear a little bit of Rush, and some like maybe Rush's debut album. I hear a little bit of that in Greta Van Fleet as well. So Greta Van Fleet is not the female folk artist that you would think it is. I don't know, maybe it's just that because whenever I first heard about them, I think Greta Thunberg was kind of like a new personality in the world, and so I just kind of thought of this girl or whatever, and I guess I just totally had that one wrong. But to move on to our next Mount Rushmore member in this particular list, I want to talk about the Psychedelic Furs. And that one is rooted in the fact that the word psychedelic you would think would be more of like an experimental type of sound that would be reminiscent of the 60s. However, with the Psychedelic Furs, basically all of their output is this like very 80s core, synthy type of music that really has no business being called psychedelic. So maybe, there's something in that name there's a story to it in the background that I don't know about. I actually really like the Psychedelic Furs. Some of those albums in the early to mid 80s, really great. The Ghost in You is one of my favorite songs of the decade. But once again, nothing psychedelic about it. So I actually saw them in Indianapolis a couple years ago, or a year ago, however long it was, and they sounded great. I don't know if I would recommend seeing them if you're just basing off of their work at the time, in their heyday. If you're gonna see them now, I think the singer is a little bit I don't know, it just doesn't it didn't click with me as well as maybe even the studio stuff, which is kind of backwards. Usually the live stuff's better, but that's not the topic of this video. It's more about their name not sounding like their music. But to tie into that, my third artist on this list is somebody that opened for the Psychedelic Furs that very same night, and that would be the Jesus and Mary Chain. Now that's another example where whenever I first read that name, for some reason I thought, I think of like a Laurel Canyon, once again like a folky type of thing, and just the fact that it has almost like a religious name tied to it. The Jesus and Mary Chain, you could also confuse that for like a gospel band. And they're not, obviously. They're as I've talked about in a previous video about shoegaze, they're kind of like almost one of the pioneers of shoegaze. Just some really some guitar tones that just have a lot of effects on them, especially early in their career. And then once you hear the song Reverence, it's my favorite song by them. I wanna die just like Jesus Christ. That's probably not like pro Christian. I don't know. So it's definitely not a gospel band, that's for sure. So the Jesus and Mary Chain, I guess what I'm just trying to say is they sound much softer than they actually are, and if you've heard of them or if you've listened to their music, they're kind of a raw rock band from decades past that maybe don't get their due as one of the greats of the 80s rock scene, but you know, that's just another example that I wanted to bring up on this list. And the fourth and final band that I wanted to mention was The Darkness. So whenever I hear The Darkness, you would think it would be this real heavy, this metal, you know, type of music that's almost kind of satanic or whatever. But with The Darkness, it couldn't be anything farther from that. You know, the lead singer, Justin Hawkins, he presents this very like flamboyant personality, which, you know, you can see in their lead off, or in their first big single, I believe, in a thing called Love. It's anything but dark. It's bright, it's bubbly, it's upbeat. And, you know, I know Justin Hawkins takes a lot of inspiration from Queen and from AC/DC, and really that's exactly what The Darkness is. It's like a mesh of those two, and, you know, neither of those two individually would be referred to as like a dark band in their nature or whatever. So yeah, we've got Greta Van Fleet, Psychedelic Furs, Jesus and Mary Chain, and The Darkness. That would be my Mount Rushmore of bands where their names sound nothing like their music. I also wanted to throw in an honorable mention, as I was going through my phone looking up inspiration of this. Let's Eat Grandma. I'm not super familiar with this band, and, you know, overall, but that's another one that I would think would be like this heavy metal band, you know, like a modern group or whatever. But it's really kind of girly and you know, like dreamy and stuff. So that's another one that maybe doesn't match, but I think it's interesting though whenever bands or artists can throw you for a loop with what you might be expecting and then what they actually are. You know, obviously there's nothing wrong with that, nothing negative about this video at all. These are all bands that I really like, and many of them I've seen them live, so you know, I'm fans of them first and foremost. But if you have any others that you were thinking of as you were watching this video that I didn't mention, please drop them down in the comments, because I know there's a ton that I probably missed, and you know, it'd be an interesting conversation to continue down there. So my name's Joe. I want to thank you for watching this video here on Last Few Spins. If you haven't already, check out my top 25 albums from 2025. It's been a great year for music, and I just want to do more videos like this that are a little more off the cuff, maybe just the topic that I thought about just kind of randomly, and just wanted to speak my thoughts of and throw my ideas out. So once again, thank you for watching. If you like this video, hit like, and once again, comment down below, and subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to try to do more stuff like this, and I would really appreciate your viewership. Thanks for watching.